in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What a pity. Tomorrow never certain. What dwells behind the curtain? The face of evil lurking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons will breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Getting Ish Done. How's it going, Dr. Thunder?
What's happening? It's a new day. It's a new day. We're on Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. Standard Time, Eastern Standard Time now. And I think this is the last episode we're doing before Ike comes back from Ghana.
Yes. So it's been a crazy day. I didn't really get my nap, and then we're gonna continue right after the show, continue grinding all the way through till I hop in the plane at some point.
Yeah. So why would you need a nap? It's 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, man.
Well,
that's
it's
6:30. That would be 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So why? What
I'm
what
in
time is it
Greenwich. I'm in Greenwich Meridian Time over here. GMC, right in line with good old England. It's 1:30 a.m. and by the time we're done with the show, probably be around 3 or past that. And then I'm just gonna continue working. So that's why I needed a nap, presumably. I needed a nap before, but yeah.
Because you're getting it done.
Because I'm getting this done, and yeah, it's besides the fact that I'm traveling back, it's just been one of those weeks where all these things go wrong that are outside of your control. One of the biggest issues right now, I'm sure everyone hears about the supply chain in the news and logistics, right? And when you have to deal with things whereby the last mile deal for me is sometimes stuff has to be delivered. Okay, things have to be delivered in terms of doesn't matter what it is, but I have to deal with logistics, and that's the part that's completely outside my control. And being the control freak that I am, it really grinds my gears, if you will. And it's like you feel like you've done all this stuff right all the way through the beginning. First of all, you go and you convince the client, right, to come in, you do the service stuff, everything correctly. And then there's this thing that's outside of your control and it all goes to hell, but you got to take the responsibility, and it just kind of drains you a little bit. It's like there's a certain part of work where you're not actually working, but you're just getting drained by bad news. But we gotta alpha our way through it. Isn't that right?
So I mean, does it still seem like there's a way to what am I saying? To rescue, to make something good out of this, or do you think it's done?
Luckily, the logistics issue or the supply chain issue is not just with any one person, right? So if you have a client that's ordering, the construction industry, they're ordering different types of things from different people. Luckily, you're not the only one disappointing them on the logistics side, right? So that's one thing that you have on your side. And this is with regard to now talking to the client and assuaging their concerns and all that kind of stuff, because that's one thing you have to do, right? So you have that on your side in the sense that obviously you're not bringing that up, but in the back of your head that, okay, they're dealing with this in other regards as well. And then for the recent what just recently happened, I have no idea yet. But typically, one has to, find out where the stuff is, get tracking information. Maybe you need to replace a new order. Maybe you need to find substitutions. All the while, you're holding the client's hand, making sure, for the most part, that people are not as upset, right, as they might be without you doing anything, right? So typically, you're managing expectations all the way, and then you're managing people's emotions, and you're managing your own as well. Because again, especially if you're a control freak, you're like, I've done all this other stuff correctly, and then there's this crap that's out of my hand that's blowing up, but I got to take the responsibility. I can't say anything about it. So I'm looking for substitutions, managing their emotions, trying to see if I can, and then try to, see what the hell is going on with the order in the first place. So yeah, that's.
I do want to ask you one more thing about this. So the managing emotions. So we're both introverts. We did a show last week on Thunder's Thoughts. Shyness is a superpower, and we talked about introversion and extroversion. And what was was it ambiverted or ambivert? So we talked about that. So this managing emotions seems like something that seems like a skill that you would have had to develop, not something that was native.
I mean, yeah, managing other people's emotions, right?
Yeah. So
go ahead.
No. So I mean, there's an implied question somewhere in there.
Yeah,
you can go wherever you want.
Definitely, yes, you're correct. I had to develop that one. It is still a challenge for me, especially when it is something that is outside my control. Because a lot of times I depend on just being able to think, for lack of a better phrase, outside the box with things that are in my control. Like, okay, there's a problem, but don't worry. Here's one or two ways in which it could affect you. Here's some other possible ways that we could address it. And I'm quite flexible in terms of, again, with the thinking or with the solving of problems or with the doing of things or whatever. Like, okay, I'll personally drive over there and give this stuff, whatever, all those kinds of things, right? But when it's outside your control, then it's just purely. Let me go to the first place where I had to develop this skill. I was a bill collector in college, right? For about a couple of years. I worked for City Cards, right? It was actually Sears back then, when Sears stores are still open, right? But I was at the credit department for Sears, and City Cards was the actual credit card company, right? Sears is just a store, right? So City Cards was the credit card company handling the credit. And we're calling people. I wake up at 5 a.m. and I'm calling people in the East Coast at 8 a.m. Monday through Sunday, okay? So you're calling people at Sunday, 8 a.m. and where's my money, right? And it's easy for me when there's some kind of logical basis or rational, if we're arguing on some kind of a logical basis. If there's something to, but when it's just, why you call them? And then you have to calm them down and still ask and still get the money. Okay. You can imagine, right? That's when I realized, it was quite interesting. Like my cousin, okay, who's more of an extrovert, the extroverted type, he almost thrived on it. He almost thrived on it. He's right there. He's got his coffee sitting down. He just wants to go at it with these people. Like, yeah, you could call me this. Oh, like, has all these techniques. And I could not take it, but that's where, and obviously I still had to do the job, right? I still had to meet the numbers. Right. So that's why I started figuring out my ways of kind of handling it. That was the first time I realized that. Now, what I do, though, is to just be very responsive in terms of managing people's emotions. Like when I see something is going wrong in this regard, it's outside my control, I immediately pick up the phone and make a phone call, right? When I saw a couple of things went wrong, okay, today, but immediately I pick up the phone, I call the client, right? I always want to check the emotional temperature of the, especially the most important people, the people that completely blow things up for you, completely ruin the next deal, blah blah blah. Every deal is always at the verge of any client is always at the verge of dropping off if just one. So you're always only as good as your last whatever, right? As they say, right? So trying to make sure that the relevant people, in this case project executive types, are okay, they're fine, right? And sometimes it's just a question of you sit there and you absorb the blows. That's one technique, right? Sometimes people just want this, they just need a punching bag, right? So rather than people shooting emails around or people just ignoring stuff, right, which is generally going on with the rest of the team, you with whom the buck stops, right? You got to pick up that phone and see what blows are coming your way. And sometimes it's just, let me pick up the phone, engage this person, be right there in front of this person to take the punches. And just then in the back of your head, I remember I said that you're not the only person that's disappointing them in this way. So there in the back of your head that helps you to kind of be like, okay, well, I'm not the only total douchebag here. But yeah, that was a good question.
All right.
Do you have to?
Well,
how do you deal with it?
Well, I'll tell you, something was coming to mind as you were you're talking about especially when you started talking about collecting money. So I'll tell you, one thing is I just wish that, I don't wish this. It would be so nice if just magically the money just appeared in your account and you never ever had to like go and like call people and like wrestle people about it, because that is very energy depleting. It is not a rejuvenating activity. But one thing that I have tried to do to prevent from having to do that is so for instance, like I teach online lessons and I offer lessons in like package deals. So if you want to just get one lesson, it's $75 and you have to pay me before the lesson, right? And then if you want to buy 3 lessons, it is, a little bit less per lesson, 5 lessons, a little bit less, right? But you have to pay it up front from the first lesson. And I learned to do that because often would be the case that people would be like, hey, can I pay you later? And it's like, okay, well, I already gave you the lesson. So now I'm supposed to be chasing you around about something that happened in the past, right? And this happened, it happened a few times. And so I got to the point, either that or what would happen is you have a lesson scheduled and then people flake out. So now I could have booked someone else in that time slot. Now that time, I'm not making any money in that time now, right? And, they'll call you like 30 minutes before, oh, we can't make it. Johnny can't make it because he's X, Y, and Z. Well, see, that wouldn't matter if they had already paid me for 5 lessons. And it's like, well, okay, well, the policy says that if you don't give me 24-hour notice, sorry, but that's done. If they are actually ill, then I'll say, okay, that's fine. We can reschedule that one. But I've already been basically compensated for the time, right? So that's one sort of scenario. The other thing is, and then like calling people and like trying to extend, like how much grace do you give them versus how much hammer? Like how much sending guys that look like this, to their house, do you do versus flattery and, hey, no, don't worry about it, it'll be okay, I know you're good for it, that kind of thing. And then another thing is, doing gigs, I have a whole contract system, right? I have templates for a variety of different kinds of programs that I would do for folks, private parties and festival gigs and all like this. And I always ask for a deposit, right? And so you ask for a deposit, say, okay. And okay, so now you already have the stuff booked, you already have musician reserved, and now it's like they're dragging their feet with the deposit, right? And this is not, and this has happened, this is like routine. So then it's like, okay, now if I get really assertive about give me my money, they can always just say, well, you know what, we're going to go another direction, right? So it's like knowing where that line is. And so it can be kind of and like I said, it's all of that stuff is totally energy depleting. It's not it's just not the stuff that you want to be doing at all. And even if you, as you said, you do everything that you can do, and I even set up a policy structure in a collection method that would prevent me on the backside from having to run around and chase people for money for a service that I've already done. Yeah.
It's well, first of all, shout out to Vision TV. Okay, thank you very much. Starting us early with the super chats, right? He's got $10, 10 Canadian dollars on the table. Says, yo, Ike, okay, I mean, something for the collection plate from a dusty East African who likes to wrestle with alligators all day in the Nile River. Those Nile alligators.
All right.
Definitely appreciated. And what you said is true. It is very draining. And one thing that one does throughout the process, now we're talking about, having to deal with people's emotions or having to collect money and all that kind of stuff. But one thing that helps is to use a team, even if it's from the whole top of the sales funnel in terms of touch points, following up all the way to now you sold them the stuff, and then now something fell through with the process, or something's going, or you're trying to collect money from them, is to have a couple of people, not just one person, right? Now, I was saying earlier that when it comes to the buck stopping with somebody, yeah, I'm doing that. I'm taking the final responsibility. I don't expect anybody to be as responsible for stuff as I am in that regard. But I'm always going to have somebody else follow up, right? Not just me. See, just kind of, it helps. You can imagine the situation from someone else's point of view. If they're getting called, but they know the main person has taken the heat, and then someone else is following up there, they feel a little bit more relaxed that this is being taken seriously. If it's on the persuasion end of things, well, everything is persuasion, right? Whether you're persuading them to buy or persuading them not to kick your ass or something like that, or persuading them to pay, whatever it may be. It helps when, let's say, I call you on Monday, and then somebody else sends an email on Tuesday saying, hey, we're just following up with this, we know you had a phone call with Ike yesterday, just wanted to check in, that kind of a thing, right? So, because if I call you and then I send the email and then I text you, it might begin to wear on you a little bit. But so yes, that is actually, yeah.
So do you have some guys that look like that then, that are on a retainer? So send some of those guys in an unmarked car to their place of residence.
When you talk about this, so outstanding invoices, I've never. It's a lawyer letter. Okay, that's the equivalent of the guy with the
right.
Yeah. So basically, there's a lawyer over there on retainer, and
you said you
every
sent
once
the
in a
lead
while,
attorney over there.
One of the lead attorney's goons. The lead attorney doesn't personally go over there, but one of his goons, one of his underlings. But every once in a while, a client decides not to pay an invoice on time. Like typically, and you write on the invoice, net 30 or net 15, whatever the contract says, whatever the deal is. but they always got to drag it out. And I understand, right? It's a credit system, right? Everybody wants to drag things out to the last moment and then, all that kind of stuff. So at any given time, there's always this massive chunk of money that's out there for the business that's in the future for work that you're doing right now or have already done, and it's huge. It's all it's never a small figure. So someone has to be keeping track of that all the time, sending the follow-up emails to because I'm working with companies, right? Here's the advantage of working with companies is that I'm not dealing with these individual clients that, so I'm not having to call individuals per se. Now they're people that I'm calling, but I'm calling departments. I'm calling the accounts payable department of the companies, right? So they already have a system. They're expecting to get phone calls or emails about invoice number 7318 and what's going on with that, provide an update and blah, blah, blah. So there's a system, before you get to sending the lead attorney and his goons, you go through these checks, pop, 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 pop. And then, but every once in a while, yes, I do have to. And it's crazy how that letter works. You send the letter and then they pay. it's like,
why start with that? Just start with that. That's the first thing.
Exactly. It's like, why do we have to take it here? Like
it's the Mike Tyson approach. You knock them out in the first round, so then you don't have to fight the rest of the fight. No, okay.
Yeah. Oh man, it's. But anyways, these are the things that you have to deal with. But then, one last thing on that in terms of the stuff that is out there, you gotta then have you have to have an idea what that number is in terms of at any given moment you have a certain percentage of the. Like it's always like a full quarter behind. In other words, 3 months, 90 days. Again, because I'm dealing with these big companies. Big companies, they're easy to work with, but they don't just pay you, right? I do have sometimes a small client with one of my architects that I work with. Maybe it's a home owner doing some kind of residential work. I'm doing engineering on it. Those people, they pay immediately, right? Or smaller construction company, they'll pay quick. But the bigger companies, they have their process. As everyone, the bigger the ship gets, the slower things are. So you have to know, okay, you're always a quarter behind. What is the quarter's worth of money? And you need to have that because you still need operations going on. You still need to keep on paying employees and paying your insurance and all that kind of stuff. So that needs to be, that's part of the whole process. Having credit.
I say go with the Mike Tyson approach, man.
Just knock them out. Then you got to pump money. You got to pumping up the clients because that's because if you're aggressive with the clients, chances are they're not going to want to deal with you again. But pumping and dumping clients is a real thing in terms of are you trying to keep clients for the long term? That's one approach. Are you trying to just go in and out? That's another approach. Obviously, you have to do both with different clients because you're not gonna. If you're really grinding, you're really trying to expand, really trying to grow. You can't be like, oh, everybody is a long-term special category type client. Some people are just gonna get pumped and dumped. In other words, they may not get the best service, they may not get the best treatment. You're gonna do some kind of ad hoc deal for them. You go in, go out. Those are the kind of people that perhaps you're gonna be rough with, like pay me. There's some clients because of the experience you just know that I don't want to work with these people anymore. I don't want to work with this particular client anymore. But anyways, that'll be the pump.
I keep talking about pumping and dumping clients. There you go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is often necessary. But ladies and gentlemen, this is part 2. Okay.
That's right.
This is part 2 of a conversation which we started off last week, and it's about a list of 10 things for productivity. First of all, we acknowledge that we do not control time, right? So the idea of time management is needs to be looked at in the sense that management can be thought of in 2 ways. Management can be something that you have control over. I'm managing the store inventory. I'm managing the employees. You have some kind of control over it, but you don't have any control over time, right? Time is very independent of you, Okay, unless you want to build a close to light speed space rocket and then start doing things like that. But still, at some point, you're gonna, I just kind of got myself in a. I just saw a long tangent I don't want to go down. Okay, let's not go into relativistic physics here. But the point is, time is in the category of things that you manage to get through. In other words, I managed to get the degree. I managed to survive 2015, whatever it may be. So you manage it in that regard. It's independent of you. It's doing its own thing. I managed to survive the storm, right? You didn't control the storm, okay? You just managed, right. Okay? So that's the category that time is in. So one of some of the things that was mentioned last week, the first few items listed by Mr. Ali here, whose video we will be sharing and discussing, started out talking about, first of all, you have to realize that we are all choosing what we want to do, right, Dr. Thunder? Right? It's like there is no, I don't have the time, or like you like to say, it's not in the budget. It's not in the budget because it's not in the priority, right? So if you're prioritizing playing video games, you're prioritizing playing video games, right? Just accept it. In other words, now it was the ownership kind of thing. And it went through the typical type of, well, get it out of your head and put it on a list, block out time, have a highlight, which one of the main things that he said, which is have a couple of things that you're going to want to do that day. And such that if those things get done, at least the day was not a total waste. That's how I tend to look at the highlight, right? Because you're going to have all these things there, but you want to be like, okay, these things get done, at least today, it's not a total waste. For me, for example, we were talking about this whole inventory, or shall we say logistic stuff and some other crap that's going on. Tomorrow is going to be the day where at least a few things with regards to this logistics problem needs to be taken care of. Okay, I'm going to need to secure I'm going to need to get to the bottom of certain things, secure a new order for them, talk to the client to see when exactly, how much extra they need, because there was also a defective product that arrived. Okay, which is another can of worms. So that has to be done tomorrow, along with, and then there's something else I have to do. Okay, because some director of something called me about some other problem that's going on with them. In the client now, with the client. So some big guy called me about some problem. So I got to address that one too. Like, so these two things need to be done within the next, 18 hours amongst the other crazy things that I have to do. So that's the idea of having highlights in your calendar. So you have a to-do list and then you have highlights such that it's a kind of an order of priority. These two things must be done type of stuff. Yep. And now he's talking about Parkinson's law, which I have no idea what it is. Okay, but I'm assuming it has something to do with time management and productivity. Okay, but by the way, this also dovetails with the videos which we've been doing for the past few weeks with David Allen, right? The whole stress-free productivity. And the whole thing on that was about getting stuff out of your head so that you have the bandwidth in your head. They use the phrase, your brain is for coming up with ideas, not for storing them. And I think that makes sense. Right? It's like, that's why we invented writing and so on and so on. And there's something about, let's say, again, as another tangent, tacit knowledge, for example. Tacit knowledge whereby, let's say you're a master craftsman, but you're not formally educated. What is the difference between this master craftsman that can build a building versus a formally educated engineer that knows the whole theory but can't build a building, right? And the difference is communication. The craftsman that's a master cannot communicate what he's doing, or he does not have, it's going to be difficult for him to communicate what he's doing. The engineer can write down these equations, right? About, well, here's what torque means, okay? And if I put this much force at this distance with this lever arm, I get this much torque, right? I can communicate that anywhere to anybody. I can write it down on a piece of paper and it can go everywhere. But there's a guy who just has a feel in his hand for how much torque to put in, right? And he can't really tell you that, right? So a lot of times this whole education thing is about learning effective ways of coding things, encoding them, and then communicating them. Why? Because you have to work as a team. So when you get into the whole team effort, group effort, then you need the engineer to encode things down write it down so that anybody anywhere can kind of read it, such that also when the building falls down, if it falls down, people can go back and say, well, what happened? Where did it go wrong? If it's never encoded, written down, and people don't understand it in some kind of a numerical way, numerical being the most, shall we say, precise way, then it's difficult, right? It's difficult to know what went wrong. How many cc's of this was not added, or how many x of that? If it's just all tacit knowledge, that's all in your hand and in your, you just have a feel for it, then it's not going to happen. Now, why the hell did I get there? I don't know, but we're gonna go ahead and start playing this video about Parkinson's law, fair use. Let's go ahead and unmute that. Hopefully the audio comes through.
Is related to something called Parkinson's law, which is that work expands to fill the time that we allocate to it. So if I have to film a YouTube video in a day and I give myself the whole day to film that YouTube.
Did we go over this one already? Or is it just one of those things
I don't think so.
But we know. It's one of those. It's almost like I think we talked about it. Anyways, yeah. But okay, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead. Basically saying that if you don't, because he talked about time blocking before. Okay, and when he was talking about time blocking, the whole Parkinson's law, now which I didn't know it was called, came in, which is, hey, you got to define a certain amount of time, otherwise things are going to take more time than they should. Okay,
well,
now it's always difficult.
The thing about it, the thing about it is it I mean, I think I understand the concept already. He's only talked about it for a little bit. I didn't know that it was referred to as Parkinson's law, but it seems like it's somewhat related to Pareto principle, the Pareto principle, right? Where it's somewhat related, like similar what am I saying? Concepts, similar attributes, similar things, whatever, are acting on both principles. They're common to both principles. That's what I want to say.
So whereby in the Pareto principle, basically, you're looking at from the 80-20 side of things, where 20% of your time, and
they're wasting 80% of the time. Right, they're wasting 80% of the time. They're boiling it down to the 20% that they actually need to get the job done. Whereas, whereas this, and so in a matter of speaking, you have to sort of know how long it's going to actually take you to do a job, and then you can begin wasting time. It's until you get to that. I got an hour left now. Oh, that's when I got to start doing this. I better start doing my work now.
It's pretty tough to know exactly how long things take sometimes, and there's obviously a fine balance between, well, I need enough time. I need to allot some time so that it's not just too much, right? I can't just put 5 hours to brush my teeth, let's say, okay? But how long? But when you constrain the time too much, that calendar can start looking stressful, right? Like when you have all these things back to back on the calendar, it's like 15 minutes for this and then 7 minutes for that, and it starts to get like whoa. Now, I don't know what you do, but I've started to kind of put some breathing room in the calendar where it's like it's just 15 minutes between. That way things can kind of bleed into each other and it doesn't look so crazy.
I'll tell you what I've started doing with that, because I'll have two. I basically have, it's seasonal. Okay, so everything is seasonal. So the advantage to looking at a calendar as being seasonal is that you don't have to maintain a particular rigor beyond. It's not infinitely. It's not like forever and ever I have to maintain this, ridiculous, relentless schedule. No, it's like, okay, for what is it? A semester's like, 14 weeks, 15 weeks, whatever. So if I have everything really, scheduled out for 15 weeks, you get to about, I don't know, probably get about 80% through and you'll start to feel it. like, okay, I could use a break pretty soon. But then you also know that this is going to be over in 3 more weeks or whatever it is. Then you're like, okay. And then, so what I try to do is I intersperse larger blocks of time, and even periods of time where there's not the same sort of scheduling of everything. So I'm sort of taking a break from the sort of relentless, okay, every single hour is accounted for. I'm taking a break from that. The summer tends to be like that for me. And it's not that I'm not getting stuff done. I'm still getting a whole lot of stuff done. It's just I'm giving myself a break from having every second accounted for.
100%.
Yeah. So
Mr. Nassim Taleb, one thing he mentioned says, if you wake up in the morning and you know exactly how your day is gonna go, you're a little bit dead, right?
no,
Because
right.
we know that there is, part of the living, part of the zest in life is to go into the unknown a little bit, right? And it's kind of stressful to just be like everything is accounted for. It's a little dead, And I think that it does dovetail with this principle of, having because we want creativity, we want to be able to come up with new ideas, fresh stuff, if you will. And if everything is just stuck, where's the room for that? Externally in your day, right? Where's the room for a little bit of play? And so I see 100% what you mean there. But let's continue here with this Parkinson's law, stating that the things will fill time if you do not designate the time. You might spend 5 hours brushing your teeth. Who knows?
Time that we allocate to it. So if I have to film a YouTube video in a day, and I give myself the whole day to film that YouTube video, inevitably it's going to take all day to film the YouTube video. Whereas if I only give myself half an hour or an hour to film the YouTube video and I fill my day up with other things, then inevitably I get the video done in that small amount of time. And so the actionable advice here is to leverage artificial deadlines. Even when it's something like filming a new course, like, I'm working on a course for YouTube for beginners where I kind of film and talk you to everything about my YouTube video production process. And this doesn't really have a deadline. Like I could literally do it whenever I want. I don't have to do it. It's a purely optional project, but I've set myself the goal that, okay, you know what? I'm going to film all of this course next weekend. And I've blocked out time in my calendar next weekend to film the course. And that's an artificial deadline, which means the course is going to get done. Whereas if I just had it in my mind or in my to-do list without a deadline, without a schedule, it would just inevitably never ever get done. Point number 7 is one I've started applying.
Yeah, this is great. I use this. What he's talking about. I use that all the time. I do that all the time. Artificial deadlines. Now, of course, an artificial deadline. Of course, it won't work if you don't do what you say.
Yeah.
Right. That's always that's the prerequisite for all of this stuff. I'll tell you again. It's that thing that we mentioned last week about, I got this fancy thing to take notes with, and I got all this stuff, but you're not going to do nothing. So it doesn't matter if you, have all the gear, if you're not going to follow through, and it doesn't matter how intricately detailed you fill out your calendar or your to-do list or anything else, if you're not going to actually do the things that you say. And everything that we do happens in time. And so if I know that, okay, I don't want to be going 100 miles an hour up into the very second, and then have to execute well, perform. I have to perform the thing that I've been, working on all the way up until the last second. I don't want to do that, because that doesn't give me any time to internalize stuff. It makes it hard to enjoy what it is that I'm doing. In all of the planning and all of the executing and all the working stuff out, you still have to perform it well. You still have to execute it, right? So and that takes a certain kind of bandwidth. I think about this like, and I've had this happen, and this is why, I use these artificial deadlines. This thing where I'm working on something all the way up into the last second, and I'm totally fried. And now I got to play like a 3-hour gig or something, or now I have this program that I have to do, and now I am 100% fried and I'm just barely trying to get through it. And I don't want to do that. What I want to do is everything is done a couple weeks before. Absolutely everything is done a couple weeks before. And then that next couple weeks, and sure, maybe something comes up in that 2 weeks and I have to make some changes, some adjustments. Maybe I decide I want something to be different. I have that liberty to do that. But it gives you a nice healthy buffer, and you can like rest and then enjoy the actual presentation of the information.
This is something that I do as well, and then recently I just kind of failed in the executing aspect. So there's this, and this is actually what that Mr. Director guy called me about today. Okay, because the thing was not, it's like a loose, it's not directly tied, shall we say, to an actual project, right? Let's say you have this kind of, I don't know what they call it administratively, initiatives. So let's just call it. There's some kind of initiative, right? It's not a project. But it's something that you're trying to do. You're trying to institute some kind of something, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. For the past about a month now, 2 months maybe even, okay? I've had it hovering in the calendar, like, oh, okay, this weekend, I'll knock it out. I'll take out a big bite out of it. And then when the weekend starts coming, it's not like I don't do anything, but I start like, but all these other pressing things that have dollar signs in front of them, right? Are coming, are more important. So let me move that, So I've been moving it and moving it and moving it. And then now, boom, it blew up in my face, which happens every once in a while. And this one is not a very big deal. But now, as I said, within the next 18 hours, I'm going to get it done. Okay. But for the past, I could have done it a couple of months ago. Okay. I could have gotten it done a couple of months ago, but other things came, priority wise and ate it up. So, the tools are just tools. If you don't use them, doesn't matter. You talk about your sandpaper. If you don't put in the time and the intensity, you can just have a whole bunch of sandpaper there. It's not nothing is getting smoothed out. Ain't that right, Dr. So
that's right.
Let's talk about protected time. What do you think this is? I think this is probably what we were talking about, where you're now removing external constraints on your time, and you're saying, for this time, I'm going to leave it a little free. I'm not going to schedule it, because he already talked about blocking time. So blocking time, right. And then now you talk about Parkinson's. Blocking time is, okay, you got to put a particular, don't just put a list, but say 11:30 to 12:30 is when this thing's going to happen. And then Parkinson says, constrain it, otherwise it'll expand. Similar things going on there. And now he's talking about protected time, and I suspect, and this is just time where you're not actually scheduling something. You're going to be doing something, but you're going to leave it up to you to decide what to do. So let's see.
Recently, and that is having protected time. When you're an entrepreneur and you're like working for yourself and all that kind of stuff, you end up basically being able to set whatever schedule you want. But like if you're like me and you like making connections and making friends with people all around the internet, you get to a point where your day is filled with lots and lots of Zoom calls. And I realized that for me, I need to keep my mornings completely free of any obligations or any Zoom calls. And this has been an absolute game changer, because in the morning, that means I can wake up whenever I want. Usually it's 8:30 these days. And it means that for a solid 4 hours at least, I've got uninterrupted time where I can do whatever I want. So these days I'm working on writing my book. And so the morning is my protected time for writing. But even on days where I'm not working on the book, it's just genuinely so nice.
I like his his little snip game of his picture, his video with himself writing his book, his video with himself. He's good tips there. He's got over 1 million subs. There's something about, you can tell channels that have over 1 million subs. I don't know what it is. Yeah. You can just
I've got uninterrupted time where I can do whatever I want. So these days I'm working on writing my book, and so the morning is my protected time for writing. But even on days where I'm not working on the book, it's just genuinely so nice to have that time slot where I can think about the business or plan some more videos or do the things that help move me forward in my work career. And sometimes, if I'm not really feeling it, I'll just decide, you know what, I'm going to use this protected time to play World of Warcraft or to just kind of relax and read a book on the sofa. So if you're interested in better ways to managing your time, I would recommend figuring out what your protected time is going to be, time that is just for you and you alone, or World of Warcraft, and not for anyone else, where no one is allowed to book something in your schedule. All right, Prince.
So what comes to mind here when it comes to protected time is family time.
Yeah.
You got family time in your schedule, Dr. Thunder?
Yeah, I can do a better job of that. It gets better. I do better during the summer than during the school year. The school year just becomes it just gets so relentless. It's just so much stuff is going on, and unfortunately, there's not much of it that I can say no to, at this point. So, and I've had to spend some time talking to my son about, the if you don't work, you don't eat principle. And so sometimes if we can't hang out as much, or, if I can't make it to one of his games or something like that, there's a specific reason for that. It's not because I don't want to be there. I always want to be there, but there's other stuff that's going on. But I try to, actually we're in the midst of, and we talked about this a few times, scheduling our vacation. And that's something that my wife and I did before we got married. I'm sorry, before my son was born. But also, definitely after my son came around, because he gets up in the morning asking questions about where we're going this year for vacation, before we even, that's just because he just expects that we're going to go do something. So yeah, that's a thing. Another thing that comes up in my mind when you think about protected time is, I'm a musician, of course. And so, you have to spend a certain amount of time practicing to keep skills at a certain level and to try to continue to make strides to improve all of that. And so that's something that you have to protect. Now, I don't know who has 4 hours so that you can get up and just do whatever you want for 4 hours.
Yeah.
He's must be independently wealthy. Must be a filthy rich guy.
Yeah.
If that's
he's got a nice fat YouTube channel. He's probably single, no kids, and
right.
Yeah, something like that. 4 hours is a chunk of time. Unless obviously he's the kind of guy that he's then gonna start working until like 2 a.m. or something.
Right. Well, if I need time, it's got to be after my son goes to bed. That's the only time that there is. There is no other time.
When you talk about, I asked you the question about this family time stuff, and it's something that definitely I could do better at. I don't know. I get the sense that I'm actually worse than you at this, Dr. Thunder, because sometimes I don't even. Because here's why. I get fooled into, because I work remotely. I have travel, but I don't have to go anywhere, as in an office or something like that. So because I'm around the house, I start thinking, now, I'm here, right? Even though I'm stuck, always stuck in my head somewhere, right? Thinking about something, even when I'm not in front of the computer, even when I'm sitting there at dinner or something like that, or pretending to watch TV with them or whatever. There's always something going on in the head.
Yeah.
And also the introvert in me thinks, well, that should be enough, right? I'm there. You see me in the corner of the room, right? I'm sitting in the corner of the room. Is that not enough? But no, that's not enough. And I actually, every once in a while, what I got to do is schedule it. Okay, here's the difference, because now I'm doing the whole silly intuitive thing where it's like, oh, I follow my intuition once. I'm like, oh, let me go sit on the counter and actually just sit there for a long time and just talk, right? That kind of thing. And then when I do that, I notice the difference. I'm like, this is different from me just being in the corner of the room, right? And I noticed that, let's say I noticed the difference in my wife, like, she appreciated that this is kind of, but now I actually gotta schedule it. And in the scheduling of it, there is a resistance, a reluctance, which I think is similar to what I mentioned, I believe, in your channel, Thunderstar, we talked about introversion being a superpower.
Yeah.
When I was talking about preparing for things, I said people don't like preparing for certain kinds of things because they think certain things should be more natural and flow and all these kinds of stuff, right? And I say, well, you don't do that in other aspects of your life. But if you're going to be this busy and so on, then you got to schedule this
you have
stuff.
to do it. Yeah.
You got to do it. Yeah.
And it's something that, I'll be honest, I know that's an answer to create more time, with the family and stuff. And it's almost not even, and it's not even necessarily that I don't know. It's not that I'm resistant to it per se. The energy thing is a big deal. I said this before. There's a lot of discussion about time being the most valuable thing that you have. It's the one thing you don't get any more of. But we don't talk very much about energy. And when you're frying it down to the at both ends, and you don't have any energy left, even when you do spend time. I'll admit, some of the best naps that I have is when we go out as family. We go to the movies. Man, I go to sleep almost immediately, and I'm just exhausted, just exhausted, and often the same thing will happen. We'll say, okay, it's going to be movie time. Let's watch a movie together. It's always something, my son wants to watch, and we'll be in there. And, I was surprised this last time we did that, which was just a couple days ago. I stayed up the whole movie, and I actually didn't even doze at any. But usually I go straight to sleep. And and I think about that. I'm like, yeah, that's not that great. You want to be, because you're trying to be, because you want to be present. You want to. It's not just that your body is in the room, but you want to actually be engaged with what's going on, and you're participating in the same experience. It's that kind of thing. And if you're either, like you said, sort of like a space cadet, where your body is there but your mind is elsewhere, or if you're just flat out sleeping, that doesn't seem to be honoring the sort of spirit of the activity.
Yeah, it's I definitely need to to because there's certain areas where you can say, well, you know what, definitely got to get better at that one, right? If for example, I'm the kind of person, let's say if we're going on a hike together, I don't even necessarily think that both of us should be even hiking at the same pace or stopping and looking at the same things. That's just me. You know what I mean? It's like if I go off over here to the side of the water,
too bad.
that's, you know what? To be honest, I'm not. I actually like I am fine with that, like 100%. But obviously, this is not about me, right? But I'm kind of fine with that. I'm like, hey, if you wanna go over there, and you're going over there to the whatever, and I'm going over here to the waterfall, that's fine. Like, I see you down there, you see me up here. It's the whole corner of the room thing again, right? Like,
right.
I'm like, I'm here and you're here. You're having your experience, I'm having my experience, right? Because I tend to be in my, regardless, okay, because this is not obviously I have to do things that it's not about me, right? But for me, I'm in my head just most of the time anyways. Like, even if I'm hiking,
right.
okay?
Right.
Even if I'm hiking and I'm looking at the flowers and I'm touching the grass and all that, it's an internal experience for me, right? It's not an external experiance.
Yeah,
so
that's right. I'm the same way.
Yeah, so I'm like, hey, go ahead.
I'm very much. What is the word? Cerebral, right? Cerebral. Very. What's the? I tend to intellectualize everything and in my head, all of that stuff that they say. That's just what I am. I was talking to a colleague of mine yesterday, and I described myself as being an introvert, and they said, "Yes, that's a good way to put it. You're definitely an introvert." And it's not more of a colleague, less of a sort of a. There's some colleagues that I have that are friends, close friends, and then there's others that are just kind of colleagues I have a good cordial relationship with. This is a colleague that I have a really good cordial relationship with, and because I tend to I don't say anything, I don't I go to work, I'm in meetings and stuff, and I almost don't speak. I don't say anything. And unless somebody asks me a direct question, or something rises that only I can answer that question, then I'll speak up to it. And usually the case will be in an hour meeting. I might talk once at the very end of the meeting. That's it. If that, I see it as a success if I don't talk at all for the whole meeting. But it's not because I'm not very much engaged. It's not because I'm not engaged. I'm very much engaged. I'm thinking through all of the possibilities and everything that's going on, and all kinds of stuff that's going on, right? I'm analyzing things. I'm seeing things from, I'm trying to put myself in different perspectives, all that kind of stuff. I'm doing all of that, but I just don't say anything.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's like me being fully present. Right. But to other people, that's like, dude, like you weren't even here. Like, we didn't even know you were here because you didn't say anything.
And you're like, what do you mean? I sat down, I was actually paying attention, because so sometimes there are these, you speak of meetings, right? I'm going to have one on Monday, right after I land on Sunday. I'm going to go into the city, San Francisco, and be in some glass room all day, right? And a lot of the times for these meetings, my perspective, there's nothing really going on, right? There's a lot of talking. There's slides, there's that, but it's not much that I think I need to contribute to. In the past, okay, and until somebody pointed something out to me, like, that's not a good idea. In the past, I'll have I'll have a pen and a pad or something like that, and and I'll be working on some other things. it's almost I'm quite stupid in the sense that it's almost like I don't think people are noticing, right? Or I don't think it's a big deal. Like okay, I'm there, you're talking, we go, okay, yeah, and people are taking notes and all that kind of stuff, but mine, it's obvious that I'm doing something else. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
I'm punching the calculator and stuff. It's like, why there's no calculator?
Well, I'll tell you, the Zoom meeting thing has made it very difficult for me to
pay attention,
to really be paying attention.
Yeah.
So if I'm on Zoom, so Zoom is here, it's on the computer, right? And I've got multiple screens, right? So I've got another screen open and I'm emailing and whatever I'm doing there, plus my phone, and I've got the Bluetooth headset in the ear that the Zoom camera can't see. And I'm like listening to like CBA or something.
Listening to something. just listen to red pill content all through the meeting, I'm emailing people or whatever. It's so these days, like when we started first, 2020 came around and it's Zoom meetings everywhere. You didn't really have to turn on your camera. That rule wasn't there. Now you have to, and it's because of this thing, right? So turn on your camera and kind of look alive, but still, I can't. I have to be doing something else. I'm not. Come on, bro. I'm not gonna sit there and stare at the screen and not. Come on, man. I gotta be doing something else. So, yeah. Zoom. Let's continue here. Now, this one is obvious. It says delegation. Okay. Again, we're talking about time management. Surviving the time, and delegation is key. We talked.
Yeah, getting the lead attorney to send his goons over and all that.
Get the lead attorney to send his goons over. I mean, this has nothing to do with time management, the one I'm going to talk about now. But I have these. Before I had any employees, I had emails for employees. Okay, and I would use those emails to send stuff. Right. Part of the whole managing of the client's perception. Again, as I said, if I want to follow up with somebody. Right, I call somebody, and then Dan at Prometheus follows up with them. Who's Dan? Dan is the project coordinator.
That's very clever. That's clever, Ike.
It's very Nigerian. It's dishonest. That's what it is. It's dishonest enough where it's not it's just enough where it's not so much. It's not a problem. It's like. There's nothing wrong with community. What's wrong with being Dan? I didn't do anything bad. I just wrote an email that appeared as Dan at Prometheus Engineering, but it was me. So I had accounts, like for example, when I wanted to ask the AP people for money, the accounts payable department. I don't want to be a principal owner of the company asking, so I have a accounting or accounts at Prometheus Engineering thing set up, right? And I would use that. Okay. So I had all these roles and with email addresses already set up, and I would do this kind of stuff. Okay. It gets even deeper than that. Okay. It got a little bit deeper than that, but these are things that one does. But previously, probably a couple of episodes ago, and also I was talking about the hole analogy, digging a hole, right? I was like, okay, does a hole need to be dug? We're talking about efficiency and effectiveness. I believe it was last week. Does this hole need to be dug, right? Is that a priority thing? Okay, then does it need to be dug now? Does it need to be dug here? And then there's the thing about, well, how should it be dug and whom should dig it? A lot of times, once we figure out a hole needs to be dug, we start running to go dig it ourselves, right? Even though we're not great at it. And even though, as I said, maybe the hole needs to be dug with boring machines, and all we're good at is shovel stuff, right? So you're like, hey, it's a shovel can dig a hole. Let me just at least start digging it with a shovel. But it's like, bro, you can spend a month, you know, digging while because you may think, okay, I'm gonna find somebody eventually with a boring machine, okay? But let me just start with a shovel. But leave it alone until you find the person with the boring machine. A lot of times, right? A lot of times it's best to save your energy doing other things, perhaps focusing on finding someone with a boring machine, right? Than starting to dig the hole yourself, thinking, and it just kind of came in mind in the sense that, you know, before I got the employees though, I had to, you know, when you're an entrepreneur, there is no choice, right? You're gonna have to do everything yourself, you know. So I didn't have a choice there, but I have a friend whom is a CEO who, because he inherited his dad's company, okay, and it was a good person to have on deck, if you will, because I'm not a CEO type, right? I'm an entrepreneur. It's a very big difference. Okay, it's a very big difference. So the CEO type is a system type. They're managers. They have systems. They're like the accountants and the lawyers and the entrepreneurs. We look at them as people that block things from happening, right? You know, people want to put things in straitjackets and all that kind of stuff. Entrepreneurs like, hey, what do you mean? Let's just go, just make it happen. Make it happen. Say yes, yeah, whatever. Screw it, you know. So. Yeah. While, you know, when I first started this stuff, you know, and I'm in communication with him, and he's giving me all these kinds of tips about systems and stuff. So way before I started instituting these systems, or again, having employees to delegate, I started creating these roles, because the roles are based on things that I was doing already. So if I look at from the beginning to end, from the beginning of like, okay, I'm prospecting, I'm selling, and then I get the client, and then I write a quote for the client, and then whatever it may be, I receive their purchasing order. I do this, I do that, and then I start doing the work, and then I deliver the work, and then I send an invoice, and all those things. So you start chunking those things into different, these tasks are different roles, right? And then I started then having the email addresses, as I mentioned before. I started building the system way before I had anyone to fill it in. But a lot of that was, you know, due to talking to him and, you know, watching YouTube videos and all those other kinds of things, right? Just because we're absorbing information about how these things work. But delegation is 100% important here. But let's see what he has to say about it.
Yeah.
Principle number 8 is delegation. Now, this one is a little bit weird, because normally when you say the word delegate, people imagine that, oh, well, I can't afford to delegate something. I don't have enough money to delegate to hire someone. And sure, that's probably true. But the way that I think of it, even when this YouTube channel wasn't successful, was that, like, what is actually the dollar value of my time? How much is my time actually worth? And when it came to running my business, I decided that, okay, my time is worth £20 an hour or $25 an hour. And that means that
This is a huge one. Okay. Now, obviously, you know, there's and this can be applied by everybody, right? There's certain things, like, for example, I tell people that if you're not good at writing Excel spreadsheets and it's part of your job, or you have to do it, or it helps with your job, right? There's certain tools that you want to create for your job. Spreadsheets is something that comes in handy with different kinds of jobs. It doesn't just have to be accounting or engineering or whatever. But in the world of engineering, coming up with these kinds of tools like the spreadsheet or MathCAD or MATLAB, you know, things in which, you know, you can put in a whole bunch of equations and programs, let's call it programs, writing a program for yourself even, right? Some people even go all the way there and write these programs to implement these things. If you're not good at writing programs, like myself, like I don't have the patience for it, then you can go ahead and you know it's going to help your job, right? Pay somebody to do it for you. Okay, it doesn't have to be an employee. You're not at the level of employee yet. You were talking about transcribing music, for example, the other day, and let's say transcribing music is not your forte, okay, and it's not because you just don't like doing it, let's say, or it's, you know, you just don't like doing it. And it's not the kind of thing where if you don't do it, some particularly important skill is going to atrophy, right? I don't think Excel is such an important skill that, and by that I mean, exactly, right? I don't think it's such an important skill that, if I don't, it's because, I got the concepts. It's not like I can't think. I just don't want to type stuff in cells and organize it and put color. Like, no. No. That's other people's stuff. Okay. So if you don't want to transcribe music, you don't want to write Excel sheets, you don't want to blah, blah, blah. Like it could even be your job. Somebody's paying you, $50 an hour to do something. And that there's something else that you could pay somebody in Brazil, $5 an hour to do for you. Okay. Right. I say pay them.
Fiverr.com.
Fiverr.com. Pay them to do it. Okay. And then the thing about giving yourself a dollar value on your time. I listened to this guy called Naval Ravikant. I don't know if you've heard of him, Dr. Thunder. Definitely one of these good intuitive types. That's very he speaks very well as well. And the reason I mentioned intuitive is the sense that he communicates ideas in the way that I think you will probably like, right? Where he's covering, it's all layered. There's a concept on top of another concept, and it's all very kind of organized and smooth, but it's not in this kind of chunky way where he's giving you a list of things like this. No, he's kind of giving you the ideas, but it's still very concise. And if you're intuitive yourself, you can see what he's doing. Yeah, you can say, I see. So Mr. Ravikant talked about making sure that this dollar hour that you give to yourself is way bigger than what you might even be actually able to sustain or pull out of the market at the time, right? So you can say, hey, I'm worth $5,000 an hour. And this helps. For someone like me, whom like these kind of weird voodoo magic things where, you put certain things out there and then they guide you. I like that idea.
No.
So it's like, put this big dollar amount and say yes. And then you start, because it will help, again, not for everybody. Okay. But if you're a certain type of person, okay. And in this case, I'm just kind of saying generally intuitive. If you have $5,000 per hour as your guide, you're going to start changing behavior slightly to try to approximate, like, you're going to start outsourcing things more, like, because you're trying to get to $5,000 an hour. Right. And,
right.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're setting a goal for yourself, by establishing that as your value. I'll tell you, this is something that I've talked to my wife about quite a bit. This idea that your time is worth something. Okay, your time is worth something. So now my wife is very generous, and so one scenario that has occurred several times is, I can take this back because now there's a sale. Or I can take this back because this other store has it at this other price, or those kinds of scenarios. That's a pretty common kind of scenario. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that when you value your time, that always is going to be part of the equation, right? So, okay, well, I'm going to save $20 or I'm going to save $50. Okay. Now let's don't get it twisted, because sometimes you need that $50. Okay. So I'm not hating or shading anybody, but if you're considering what your time is worth, so say for instance, if you have another hour of time, and that's probably being pretty conservative, it's probably going to be more like an hour and a half of time, 2 hours of time, getting back in the car, driving back to this other place, returning it, now going over to this other place, looking at that, let alone gas, right? Wear and tear on your vehicle.
Did you mention energy?
right, energy, right? So your time is worth something. All of that stuff is so would you rather be doing that, or is there something else that you could be doing that, would be a better use of that time and that energy, right? And also, I've talked to her about, and this is something I think about also for myself is, okay, if I'm saying, okay, if I'm trying to figure out how much I want to charge for something, I just say, okay, well, it's going to take me 4 hours to do this particular, to write this chart, or to do this particular task that somebody wants me to do, or whatever it is. It's going to take me 4 hours to do that. All right. And I want to make $100 an hour. I'm just making a number up now. I want to make $100 an hour, or I want to make $250 an hour. Okay. All right. Well, that makes it very easy for me to say what it's going to, what it's going to cost. Okay. It's going to take me 4 hours, $250 an hour. Okay. $1,000. Okay. That's what it costs. It costs $1,000. Now, if you think that other people are doing anything different than that in some way they're using some standardized system, you're wrong. Okay. No, it's not what's happening. People are deciding what they want to make, and it could be based on what their expenses are, could be based on a bunch of other factors that they have calculated, how much they need to be able to make to be able to afford to do the particular job. That's part of the way that I think about it. I mean, I work at I'm a church musician, and so when I'm thinking about, okay, how long does it take for me to get the music ready for a service? How long does it take me to get a particular lesson plan together to teach, an online lesson, or to, how long does it take me to whatever, so I'm thinking about that, and I always have that sort of running in my head. And so if I'm doing a certain task and I'm like, okay, I'm getting paid X amount, but I just spent 8 hours this week doing this thing, plus another 4 hours, then you have to start saying, well, based on what I'm being paid, how much am I actually making per hour? Oh, snap. I'm getting like $20 an hour.
And you're like, oh, lost.
So, yeah. So then you have to, you just have to, you have to be about that. This delegation thing that you were talking about, as far as I'm going to call it virtual delegation, where you're actually still the person that's doing the other task, but you have just created an alternate personality or whatever to carry out the task, which is very clever. It's very clever. Yeah, I mean, if it's still you doing it, then you still have to make the decision, how much do I need to be able to make this worth doing it? And I think you get to a certain place in your life and in your career where you just have to demand more. You just have to do that, because nobody else is going to do it. They're not going to say, you know what? I have been watching you from afar. I've been watching you from afar, and you're such a good-hearted person. And you put so much effort into your work. You know what?
I'm gonna give you more money.
With this, you know what? I am going to dub you. Ding! Now everybody's going to pay you more. There you go. You have received the mystical. And matter of fact, I'm going to follow around and I'm going to make people pay you right. That's going to be. That's not what happens. There's no. That's not what goes on. What happens is people, as they get more experience, they start to recognize really what's going on and starting to ask for what it is that they want. Not just what people will tolerate paying them.
Yeah, and yes, and you would ask for it, and then they would give it to you, and that's how the marketplace works. And not everybody can ask and receive in that way, right?
Of course.
That's the big difference between someone who has put in the work and someone who has not. I talk about certain tasks that you can find somebody to do these spreadsheets I was talking about, right? If the concept, the engineering concept or whatever it may be, is, I already have the idea and I can kind of chart it out, chicken scratch, and say, here, go look up these things, put these equations in these positions, and run this thing out this way. You can find somebody in the marketplace at Fiverr, even whatever, to do it. Or I could get one of my employees to do it, for example, at a much lower rate than what I'm asking the client to give me, right? But the thing is, the client will. What's the difference between me and the person that is doing that work is the question, right? The person whom is taking the work at this level, at $30 an hour, versus me charging the client $500 an hour, which is typically what I'm shooting for, what I do in terms of for my time. If I'm going to spend time on this, it's going to be $500 an hour, and I'm going to turn around and I'm going to give somebody $30 an hour. What's the difference between these two people? The difference is in the fact that this guy just hasn't gotten himself in the marketplace and asked. That is the difference. Right. Because there's no reason why he cannot see. It's going to take time for him, as you mentioned, to see what's really going on. Right? He's going to see. Okay, well, there's a client out here. Stuff is happening like this, and blah blah blah. He has to go out there, put his face there, be the person that's responsible, get trusted. Okay, and then he can ask for that amount. So and then he's at the risk. He's taking the risk. He has to take the blows. We were talking earlier about where the buck stops, right? That's the entrepreneur. Me is the risk taker, right? And a lot of times people look at when it gets, now we're talking about exploitation. We're talking about delegating, and they're like, oh, isn't delegating some kind of exploitation? Well, number one, yes, okay, because words have several. Just because something is exploiting doesn't mean it's bad. Words have several meanings. Shout out to Dana. I think Dana didn't want to admit that elite has elite means elite. Okay, you can have an elite. You still camera.
On that, man? You still on that?
You can have an elite. You can have an elite bottle of water. Elite doesn't mean a political elite of a particular kind. That is bad. Okay.
Right.
Anyways,
right.
So the difference between the reason why this person is not getting that money is because he just hasn't gone out there to demand it from the marketplace. And the things that it takes to go out there and to demand it from the marketplace are not just simple, right? There's time, there's selling yourself, there's taking the responsibility, and there's having the track record, such that now you have that. You have your hand on that dial, and you can turn up the knob, okay? And then you'll be surprised, people will pay. And generally, I like to keep anyways. Let's before I go too far off field here, we're back at this delegation question, okay? And let's see what he has to say completely before I continue, because I just saw the $25 per hour, and then I want to get into the whole, put a big number for yourself. It helps a lot. Okay, it helps a lot. Some people don't like hearing those kinds of things. If I can imagine a particular type of Dr. Thunder out there. Not you, but there will be a type, maybe a little bit more narrow. That's like, oh, what do you mean? That's pie in the sky. Are you worth it or not? Like, what do you mean you're worth $5,000 an hour? And how is saying you're worth $5,000 an hour going to actually get you there, right? In other words, the work that needs to be done. For me, the work is always implied. I always not You know, when I do these kinds of mental gymnastics type stuff, of course I know I'm going to need to do the work. Of course I know it's going to need to actually be a guiding star. Like when I put the $5,000 an hour guiding star out there, I know I'm going to have to follow it. You know, I'm not saying you just say it and then go to sleep. You know,
Yeah.
Anyway, let's continue.
Anything I'm doing that I don't enjoy, that I can outsource to someone, that I can delegate for less than $25 an hour, I absolutely should do that. And that principle of delegation has encouraged me to get a cleaner, which has been great because now we have someone who comes in to clean the house every other week, which means I don't.
That's one thing I've done. Cleaning. Okay. It took me a long time. Okay. To hire somebody to come clean. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, but the value is huge. Okay, the value is huge. Okay, now my wife cooks and cleans and whatnot, but there's levels to the cleaning stuff, and as we mentioned earlier, there's opportunity costs. There are things that perhaps she can be doing that are more worthwhile than going all crazy on the floor this weekend, right? So, the opportunity cost thing that you mentioned earlier, I wanted to, you didn't quite use the term opportunity cost. But you're talking about, hey, I can save money rather than pay a gardener. I can save money, okay, by, getting my buddies together one weekend, using this guy's truck, going over there and getting the mulch, and then coming over here and bringing it back and then spreading it myself. And then next weekend, we're going to go get this. And next weekend, I've spent 3 weekends rather than just give Jose, shout out, no racism. Rather than just give Jose $250, right? You're like, oh, I can save the $250, and I can save the $150 on the mulch because there's free mulch and there's this and this. It's like, dude, you just spent 3 weekends and you're still talking about stuff being free. You spent 3 weekends rather than give somebody $250 and you're still saying it's free. You don't understand opportunity cost. Because now here's the thing. If you don't have something better to do with your time, then that's a problem. Because you have to look at yourself like, what kind of a position, like, why do I think it's worthwhile for me to go around town, borrowing my buddy's truck and then driving to the mulch place and then next weekend, like, if indeed I'm free to do that, there's a problem. That's why you should look at it, right? So, and this example that I'm bringing up, past relationship, that I was telling somebody this thing about, like, it is an actual conversation about saving money on gardening by doing this whole mulch operation. I'm like, I'm like, no, just pay professionals, pay them, find the best person, pay them one time, it'll be done correctly, and then it's over, okay? Because $250, I can go upstairs and freaking piss $250 real quick. Like, what's the whole? I gotta say now. There's a whole there's a sport in it for certain women. There's a sport in saving money, right? There's a sport in coupon clipping and getting the deal, right? Oh, I just love me a deal. So, but the point is, they have to recognize that, hey, that little sport thing that you're doing, it's becoming a problem, okay, in real time and in terms of your value of your time, okay. I get that you're getting a little thrill out of this, but there are things that you could be doing, okay. And as a matter of fact, everybody has things that, they're like, oh, I would like to study and get my real estate exam. Oh, I would like to get this other type of certification. Oh, I would like to. It's like, well, how about that? That could be one thing, right? Rather than go on this mulch expedition for the next 3 weeks, okay? How about you spend the next 3 weekends doing that? Okay, so I've always had things to do, okay? So for me, it was never a question, right? But I'm saying that if you don't have things to do, you need to look and check because it's a problem. Your time should not be that cheap where you have 3 weekends trying to save $250, and now
can
go ahead.
I suggest something, Mike?
Mhm.
Maybe this should be 3 parts.
Yeah.
Because I think we could.
Yeah.
And this is why I say this.
Schedule.
I
All right.
mean,
Principle
we could,
number.
there's, I guess he's got probably 2 or 3 more points left, judging by the segments. And I think we could go back maybe one segment and do a little bit of review on it, because there's a lot more that we could talk, I think, on this topic. So I think maybe stretching this to a third episode, I think, is a good idea. And but I did want to say that, just to kind of punch this whole idea of valuing your time, as it were, establishing what the value of it is, and then not being willing to do things for less than that is, but then, as you suggested, being willing to look at all of the various things that you're doing and seeing if you're missing out because you're not willing, because you're not looking at it that way. You're not seeing where you're missing out on opportunity cost.
100%. I wasn't looking at the time, actually, but
yeah. Ryan, I know that you have stuff that you that you have some alligators you need to wrestle. Shout out to Vision.
I got some alligators I need to wrestle. Shout out to Vision for another super chat. He's definitely the sponsor for the show today. Can we get a sound effect for him? Don DeMarco, indeed. Thank you very much. We'll continue next time on this topic. Okay. Opportunity cost, and then there's a sunk cost fallacy, right? Chasing, good money after bad. I already started doing something, so I might as well keep on doing it. It's something else that people do. Okay. Now, prior, we were talking about protected time and time that need to schedule to for family and certain other types of things. And this is the other side, the flip side of the story, right? So you need to, first of all, be in that mode where I was always automatic, or I am always automatically in, where it's like, I gotta be doing stuff, right? As you talked about on the introvert conversation, like when I'm sitting somewhere, some banquet, or whatever, I don't care, a wedding, I don't know what it is. I'm always like, is this worth it? Like, I wonder what else I could be knocking out right now. That's why I talk about that meeting where I bring in this pad and paper and I'm punching the calculator, because I'm like, I hear you talking, bro, but I think I could also be doing it. Like this can be getting knocked out too, right? Like, I mean, come on, this is quite valuable. And I mean, sitting there just listening to you, I mean, I like what you're doing, but so that's one end, right? Where it's like, okay, go, do. And then when you got that figured out, then you start worrying about then the problems that comes that happens, right? The problems of, okay, I guess I gotta schedule time. I guess it's not okay for me to just sit in the corner of the room and think that's quality time. It's okay for me not to. It's not okay for me to be sleeping during the movie that I'm family movie time, or just zoning out all the time, or all those other kinds of things, and constantly with one ear bud in there, listening to something else while thinking about something else.
Man, I have to tell you, I'm God ain't finished with me yet. I'm kind of a mess with some of that stuff. And then the thing is that when somebody confronts you about it, it's like it's hard to see what the problem is. Like why do you? It's like, why does it matter to you? Why do you care? I mean, can you even? How does this alter your experience in any way? That it becomes that, and and then you just have to. I don't know. You just have to realize that, yeah, maybe, but people are just not like that. That most people are just not that way. They're just not. They're never going to get that. It's never gonna make sense. And
never gonna make sense. You gotta do what you gotta do, and you're also gonna fall short. Gotta make sure I'm not shortchanging that aspect of the. For example, I talked about the scheduling of it, and you're not gonna, just like with your work too, you're not gonna be 100% with this. So even if you do schedule, or even if you are trying, there will be some kind of a slipping. So if somebody points out to you, Dr. Thunder, that, there's some slipping with work, right? I think that it's easier for you to recognize that and be like, yeah, I didn't meet that deadline, or I didn't do that. But when it comes to this personal stuff, it's a little harder. Like you're more likely to be like, like what's what's the big deal? What's the big deal with that? Like, oh, come on, I didn't. Yeah, like, look at this grand hotel you're staying in. What do you, this is, think money falls from trees. Pull out the high value man card real quick.
That's right.
well, you wanted, you wanted the high value man husband. Well, this is what it takes. Well, anyways. Those kinds of feelings come up more than when somebody says something on the other side, where it's more objective. So, again, the recognition of these is actually important, and that's a halfway towards the solving the problem. So, part 3 will be next week. Getting things done Wednesday. Okay, Wednesdays now. 6:30 Pacific time. 9:30 Eastern time. Case closed this Sunday. We're going to be doing it on Dr. Thunder's channel, but I won't be there. Okay, and we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I might be able to listen in. Actually, I might be able to listen in. Then what you got on Thursday on Thunder's Thoughts?
Yeah. So tomorrow I'm looking at doing a show on, I think last time we talked about it, and I said I was going to do a show on, I think that was this Sunday. It wasn't on Getting Ish Done, was on A Case Closed. I was promoting what I was going to do, and I said I thought I was going to do a show on this recent panel discussion. It was a short panel discussion about the sort of Kevin Samuels effect. It was done on one of the sort of major black media outlets, but instead, especially given the verdict of the Johnny Depp case, I'm going to do a show on why the Johnny Depp verdict is good news for black men. In particular, I want to focus on the history of lynching, of baseless allegations against black men, and how that has been very much trouble for us. Very much trouble for us. Me Too is nothing but lynching reborn. And so anytime you have a verdict like this, when things are being scrutinized and evaluated, I think in a pretty fair manner, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Daylight is a great sanitizer. It's
Mm-hmm.
just good
Yeah,
to,
the judge was definitely very fair in this case. Um, it was definitely a moment in history type stuff. She definitely knew that everyone was watching, and it was good stuff. And I was watching Ramil dropped a little short video on it, so
Mm.
that's how I knew whom won and whatnot. And yeah, he was
let me tell
definitely.
you. Let me tell you. Heard lied. She lied all over the place. So many inconsistencies in her story. And when I was listening to that verdict, I was like, goodness gracious. They were not buying any of it.
Mm.
And the only thing that Depp was held responsible for was something that was a sort of, retaliation, that he did. So, you gonna drag me? Okay, I can drag you too, right? And so he was awarded $15 million. She was awarded $2 million, which math shows that he's getting $13 million from her.
Does she have money?
So she has at least she probably has 13 million.
Okay, so there you go.
She's in my estimation, she got lucky on that part of it. I thought I would say it's relatively fair. Really, what needed to happen is Johnny Depp needed to get, he needed the world to see that this woman, this stuff that she was saying was hogwash, so that he can start getting work again. But she probably cost him 100 million, 150 million. I mean, he's like the biggest star in the world. So
that is true.
But it's a positive. I think it's a positive thing. I know Johnny Depp is a rich white guy. I know that, but I think for black men, this is a positive. This is positive. So I'll be talking about that. Be me and Dr. Doug discussing in detail, and I may be doing I'm unveiling a new segment on Thunder's Thoughts. I always have the I've got the TikTok theater. We always have a pre-show. Always have a featured video in an article, like that. So always have those sort of elements, and then at the end of the show, opening the panel up. So all that stuff is there. But I'm thinking, I'm going to unveil a new segment, and that segment is going to be evaluating what I'm calling the simp anthems. Anthems. And it's going to focus on music, probably like a lot of R&B stuff from probably 80s and 90s, when that was like at epidemic proportions.
I light a bunch of candles all around.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll take a look at some of those. That'll be fun. At one point I was going to do like a whole show where I just like did a bunch of like the top 10, simp anthems or something. But the more I think about it, there are hundreds of these things. And I'm like, I could just do a segment and cover like one each show, and that could I could do that for hundreds of episodes. So many of them.
Content strategy right there. Endless that is a great idea. That and it will be quite funny because let me ask a dumb question. It would seem to be the case that people don't really write songs like that anymore, huh? Like, well, not exactly like that anymore, right?
Not as much. I think that there has been a sort of change in general. I think that some of the extra sappy stuff. I mean, there still are some cats that deal with that, but who was I listening to? Oh my goodness, I heard a concert he did. It was one of these, like, he was doing it for a fundraiser. It was just him with tracks. It was like during a Zoom session. But it was a big star from the like the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of the guy right now. It's the guy that sings the song. He says, "What was it? Let me woo woo woo." It's got that in there. I can't do it, man. I can't do it. I'm not even gonna do it. But anyhow, I saw him do one. So I think a lot of the guys that they made their name doing that in the 80s and the 90s, they're still going strong. They're still doing concerts and stuff. But I think that
it's the people from that era that are going to watch those concerts, right? It's not like it's not like
right. I don't
kids
think
these days.
Yeah. I don't think that it's the same. It's not the same kind of subject material. It's not a lot of this sort of groveling. I'll drink your bath, your bath water. It's not that. It's not that kind of. Kind of thing. Let me. What was one of the lyrics in Joe was, and don't get me wrong, man. I love Babyface, and After 7 and all that music. It's such great music that it's crafted so well. There's a lot of great music in that time period, but when you analyze the lyrics, it's like, you guys, like, what? This stuff is just totally ridiculous. And
Jeffrey Osborne, someone says, is that whom you were talking about?
Jeffrey Osborne, thank you. That is right. That's right, Jeffrey Osborne. That's one of the kings of the simp anthem. But great music, great produced very well, great melodic content. But the subject matter is really compressed to it's only like one thing. Let me see how much different ways I can beg you. Just go into all this detail about begging, and but Joe, for instance, he says, what's the see all the things your man won't do.
Yeah, I know that.
That's
line.
the name of the song. All the things your man won't do. Okay, it's like, dude, that's straight dirty macking. It's straight dirty macking, man. It's like these cats get right down into it. They're trying to woo your girl. She on your arm. It's like, man, dude, go get your own girl, man. This stuff is so ridiculous.
Why are all the good girls taking all the time? That's some lyrics by Joe too, right? Why do I keep falling for someone else? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said though, some of the, like, actually liked Joe. I thought it was one of the good ones.
Super talented dude, man.
Yeah,
ultra talented dude. Great songwriter.
Casey and JoJo, Joe to see, I couldn't stand them. They had some good stuff, right? All my life, pray for someone like you. There's some good stuff, but there was just something. I think it already started getting old for me. Like at that point, like it was. Yeah. I think that was like towards the end of the '90s. It was already like I was already kind of like whoa, like this is a little weird, because I guess I was already seeing a little bit of the reality versus I guess I was
right.
Yeah.
Like, really? You do know you do know if you try to drink somebody's dirty bathwater, you know that would be disgusting, right? You do know that you would. I mean, you probably get super sick. You probably be sick for several weeks. You do know that that's not like some it's not going to taste like Starburst or something. It's not going to be. I'm just saying. I'm just. It's just it's a lot of goodness. It's a lot of romanticizing trivial behavior.
Mm-hmm. See, it's interesting. I had a conversation, and then we'll close it here. But I had a conversation with a Game Changer about this. Just kind of asking like what was going on in that era with, because it's black men singing these things, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Like it was like so that part was obvious to everybody. It wasn't like evenly spread across like the rock and rollers and the other. It's like no. There's black dudes singing this thing, and I was asking him like, what exactly was this? Because if like was it a problem, or was it because one way he was looking at it like he put the kind of rose-colored glasses on it. It was like no, this was actually like Shakespeare, and this was it was actual genuine love, which I think is a crazy thing. But anyways, let's not get into what I think love is. Go ahead.
But contrast a lot of those lyrics with
with Shakespeare.
Yeah, right. No, with a song, a recent song, smoking out the window. So now listen to, and this is a huge hit, great, melodies, great, orchestration, the choreography is killing. This is Silk Sonic and Bruno Mars. So he says, he said, "Wait a minute, this love started off so tender, so sweet, but now she got me smoking out the window." Okay, so that's the thing he says, not to a pitch, but just talking it, in that that deep, Mac Daddy voice, right? Okay, so then he must have spent 45,000 up in Tiffany's, got her bad kids running around my whole crib like it's Chuck E. Cheese, put me in a jam with her ex-man in the UFC, can't believe it, I'm in disbelief. This bee got me paying her rent, paying for trips, diamonds on her neck, diamonds on her wrist, and there I am all alone. I'm so cold. You got me out here smoking out the window, singing how could she do this to me? Oh, I thought that girl belonged to only me, but I was wrong, because she belonged to everybody.
So
sounds like a red cat was getting red pilled in the song.
Yeah, so it's a different type of simp anthem now. This is more like simp confessions, simp awakening. It's a different.
It's great.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I wasn't buying Game Changer's take on that there was something good going on there. I don't think there was anything ever good about that.
Well, that if there was something good, so here it's tough, okay, because there is this idea of, the Bible even tells us to to think on the positive things, right? Think on the good things, and there's a hope in that, right? And I just think that 80s, 90s period was the sort of transitional period. It was like a period where you still had a lot of sort of more kind of traditional women, traditional, modest, X, Y, and Z, all that kind of stuff. And yes, there is a certain kind of dysfunction that was happening in the Black community, but it's sort of like reflecting back on like the 70s and kind of like that, it's not kind of still thinking about that time period.
Okay.
And so I think that the music was sort of expressing something, a hope for, things, a hope that things would be a certain way, or there was a conditioning to expect that things would be a certain way, but they weren't really that way. It was a little bit of a hoping against hope. And so I think it's been too much of this sort of dysfunction now. And so now it's like, I just don't think that hope is there anymore.
Gotcha.
And that's
interesting.
In some ways it's in some ways it's too bad. You'd like it to be that way. The whole thing, Rollo always talks about how men are the romantic ones, right? It's the men that are willing to go in and sacrifice themselves for the ones they love, that, sacrifice their life for them, to go battle the dragon, to all that kind of stuff. It's us that, have invented that whole storyline. And I think, perhaps for good reason, I just don't think that I just don't think it's the same dynamic now. I just don't think there's the same reward for that willingness to sacrifice. In mass, in individual situations, of course there is. Of course there is. But in mass, and remember, this kind of music is for mass consumption. So I just don't think that I don't think you're going to be able to sell this stuff in mass consumption now, because I don't think folks are going to buy it. Literally and metaphorically, I don't think they'll buy it.
Indeed. Lots of money was made though in the 90s. And what you mentioned about the sacrifice and the fact that there's a different set of circumstances on the ground, right? Such that,
right.
Well, it cannot be the same. It's not the same trade-off. It's not the same bargain. It's not the same contract going on anymore. That's for sure.
Right.
And also, one could argue that the fact that the 90s was like the dying with a whimper or a scream, okay, of something, in the sense that if this thing is actually going on, if you have a certain kind of social contract, there's no need to be screaming about it like this, right? Like it's, it's no need to be begging like this, because now this is I'm going to throw a crazy wrench in here. It may be a bad example. There may be more factors here. I'm going to flatten things by just talking about the African culture, West African culture, my particular corner of West African culture, where we don't even have a word for love, right? And the whole romantic love thing, yeah. And we know that the whole romance thing was, in its particular form, was something that people came up with. Like it's an art, right? It's not just there's sexual desire, there's procreation, there's family building, all that kind of stuff. Then there's this whole romance thing, which is an art, right? which is, you know, flowers and writing of this and that. Courtly love coming out, you know, the French and all that kind of stuff. Very foreign to Africans, right? But the contract was still operating. You know, men are doing what men are doing, women are doing what women are doing. And I'm just relating that to say that perhaps when the contract is dying, that's when the fluff, the surface stuff, the art gets kind of harped on more and more because nothing is really happening underneath. So it's all just flowers now and candle lights and candle wax and stuff like that. But yeah,
let me say this one. You know, something occurred to me. Let me say this one last thing, and because the screen is getting brighter behind me, I'm getting darker and darker here. There we go. That's a little better. But I was just going to say, I totally thought I totally lost my thought. What were you saying? Say the last thing that you were saying. It'll probably come back to me.
You're saying that, you know, the dying of the actual real contract and real things working out leads to a rising up of the surface level, just kind of whimpering. And I mentioned earlier that the romantic love was created foreign to Africa, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that there's something to do with black men trying to show their value. Okay, so if you consider our you know, American society has been particularly hard on black men, and so as far as evaluating us in the same way as maybe other men, you know, say white men, for instance, that have more access to the power structure, that have more access to finances, X, Y, and Z, right? So then, as a sort of making up for a deficit there, you know, we can beg you better, you know, kind of a thing. Yeah, I know that's a super, like, you know, it's very much more complex than that. I boiled it down to something that is, you know, that's even super simplistic and maybe hyperbolic and blah, blah. Okay, that's fine. But still, I think that's part of, I think that's in there. I think that's part of what's in there. And you have to consider how talented Black American people are, you know, musically talented in particular. Consider the you know, how much the music that we created has impacted the world, everywhere, every corner of the world. It's pretty incredible. So yeah, so I think that's and I think there's a tradition of that sort of kind of begging and, you know, please, baby, please, you know, there's a history of that. So yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, with that, okay, with that little nice soliloquy
Please,
at the end
baby,
there,
please.
about please, baby, please, we are out. Enjoy your evening. Peace.
in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What a pity. Tomorrow never certain. What dwells behind the curtain? The face of evil smirking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, could either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come get it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come get it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.